Okay, picture this. You just got a ton of money to build a giant new office complex.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, shiny skyscrapers, the newest tech, the whole shebang. Sounds pretty awesome to
Yeah,
me.
that's the dream.
But hold on. Before you even start thinking of what kind of desks to get, there's a huge decision you have to make.
Yeah.
Where to actually put this amazing building.
That's right.
And that's where site selection comes in. And let me tell you, it's way more interesting than you think.
Yeah, it really is. It's like you're baking a cake. You can have all the best ingredients, but
Yeah.
if you bake it in the wrong pan, the whole thing is going to be a mess.
I love that. So in this deep dive, we're going to explore site selection for commercial projects using all sorts of resources, government guides, advice from experts, even some real-life examples.
That's right.
We'll learn why picking the right spot is like building a super strong foundation for your project and how to avoid making those costly mistakes that can really wreck things.
It's kind of like being a detective. You have to find clues, analyze evidence, and make sure you're not missing anything important.
Exactly. And just like a detective needs a good team, you need to build a team of experts for site selection. Think of it like your A-team.
The General Services Administration, or GSA, they're the people who handle government buildings. They have a really helpful guidebook about this.
All right, cool.
They say you need a plan for who you need on your team and what their jobs will be.
Okay, so who are the big players on this A-team? You've got your architect, of course, to design the building, and a landscape architect to design the outdoor areas. But here's where things get interesting. You might even need an archaeologist.
Yep.
Seriously, what do archaeologists have to do with buildings?
Well, imagine you start digging and boom, you find a bunch of ancient stuff or an old historical site.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that can totally stop your project.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to have an archaeologist on your team to check for these things right from the start.
I never thought of that. So it's not just about finding an empty lot. You need to make sure you're not building on top of something important. What about all the technical things? Like, how do you know if the ground is strong enough to hold a giant skyscraper?
That's where the engineers come, and civil engineers for roads and stuff like that, and geotechnical engineers to check out the soil and make sure it can handle the building.
It's incredible how many different experts you need, and they all have their own special knowledge to bring to the table.
Exactly. And that brings us to this idea of a multidisciplinary approach, which is a fancy way of saying that everyone works together, sharing their knowledge and perspectives.
So it's like having all these puzzle pieces, and when you put them together, you get a full picture of what the site is really like.
Exactly. Let's say you're looking at this beautiful piece of land, right, on the water. Seems perfect, right?
Yeah, it does.
But then the civil engineer comes in and says, whoa, hold on, this isn't a flood zone. Then the environmental expert finds pollution in the ground, and the appraiser says, hey, fixing these problems will cost you a fortune.
Oh no, that dream property just turned into a nightmare.
Exactly. If you hadn't considered all those different points of view, you might have jumped into a project that would cost you way more time and money than you ever imagined.
So this multidisciplinary approach helps you avoid those hidden traps. Speaking of traps, let's talk about due diligence. What does that even mean, and why is it so important?
Due diligence is like doing your homework before you buy a car.
Right.
You wouldn't just buy the first shiny car you see, would you? You'd want to check its history, make sure it's not a lemon, find out if there are any hidden problems.
You don't want a car that's always breaking down.
Right. And it's the same with site selection. Due diligence means going beyond just the basic checks and really digging deep into the site's past, what it's like now, and any potential risks.
Okay, so what kinds of things are we looking for during due diligence? Is it really like being a detective and looking for clues?
Totally. Think of those environmental site assessments, or ESAs, as like an X-ray for your land. They can tell you if there's pollution in the soil or water that needs to be cleaned up. And remember those archaeologists we were talking about?
Yeah.
Their work is also part of due diligence, making sure you're not disturbing any hidden historical treasures.
It's like peeling back the layers of time and seeing all the secrets the site is hiding.
And those secrets can be good or bad. Sometimes you might find something amazing that adds value to the site, like a natural spring or a stunning view that you can make part of your design. But other times you might find problems that need to be fixed, and those can get really expensive if you don't catch them early on.
So due diligence is all about being prepared and knowing what you're getting into before you jump in head first. It sounds like a smart move, especially when we're talking about something as big as an office complex.
It's crucial. And it's not just about avoiding problems, it's also about finding opportunities. Sometimes due diligence can uncover hidden gems that make a site even more attractive.
So it's like finding a treasure chest full of gold.
Haha, maybe not gold, but definitely things that are valuable and can make your project even better.
Okay, I'm with you. So we've got our A team ready, we're doing our due diligence, and we're taking a multidisciplinary approach to this whole site selection thing. What else is there to think about?
Well, these days, sustainability is a really big deal, and that's where low impact development, or LID, comes into play.
LID, what's that?
LID is all about designing and building in a way that's good for the environment. It's about working with nature, not against it. And it can play a huge part in choosing the right site.
I'm all for being eco-friendly, but how does LID actually work? Can you give me some examples?
Sure. Instead of just covering everything with concrete and asphalt, which stops rainwater from sinking into the ground, LID uses things like rain gardens and special pavements that let water through.
Rain gardens. Those sound nice. What are they, like regular gardens? They collect rainwater?
They are. They're like shallow dips in the ground, planted with native plants that can handle being wet and dry. When it rains, the water flows into the rain garden and it soaks into the ground instead of running off into the street drains.
Ah, so it's like a natural sponge that helps prevent flooding and keeps pollution out of our rivers and lakes. I like it.
Exactly. And then there are these permeable pavements. They look like regular pavement, but they have little gaps that allow water to seep through.
Cool.
This helps reduce runoff and lets the groundwater refill.
So LID is all about using smart design to deal with stormwater and make our cities more sustainable.
You got it. And when you think about LID during site selection, you can pick a spot that naturally works well with these practices.
So it's not just about finding an empty space, it's about finding a space that works with nature. That makes a lot of sense.
And guess what? It can save you money in the long run.
Really?
Well, by using LID techniques, you might not need to build those big, expensive drainage systems, and you can avoid costly repairs from stormwater damage.
It sounds like LID is good for the planet and good for business.
That's awesome.
It's a win-win. And it's becoming more and more important as we deal with climate change and all the challenges of building in cities.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot. The importance of having that expert team, using a multidisciplinary approach, doing our due diligence, and now the role of LID in choosing a site. What's next?
Let's dive into some real-world examples of how these ideas have actually worked.
Ooh, yeah. I love hearing about real-life stories. They make all these ideas come to life.
So let's talk about the GSA, that government agency we mentioned before. They actually have a really cool story about how they used all these ideas to build a new office building in Omaha, Nebraska.
Oh, cool. Tell me more.
So the GSA, they knew they needed a new building for the National Park Service out in Omaha.
Okay.
But instead of just picking any random spot, they got together with the city and asked for their input.
They wanted to find a place that would not only be good for the new building, but would also help the city reach their goals for the whole waterfront area.
So they were thinking about the bigger picture, not just what they needed.
Right. They had these public meetings, listened to what people in the community had to say, and worked together to find the best spot. And guess what?
What?
They actually got a piece of land donated to them for free.
Wow. That's a pretty sweet deal. So by working with the community and thinking about their needs, they actually saved money and got a better location.
Exactly. It's a win-win for everybody, and it shows how important it is to consider how your project will affect the people who live nearby.
That's a great story. It's really inspiring to see how these ideas can work in real life. Do you have any other examples of successful site selection?
You bet. Let's switch gears and talk about LID, specifically how it works with stormwater.
Okay.
There's this awesome example from a commercial development called Somerset in Maryland.
Somerset, Maryland.
This project is a great example of how LID can really change the game. Instead of building this huge, expensive pond to collect all the rainwater, they used rain gardens on every property.
Oh, that's cool.
These rain gardens were beautifully landscaped, so they looked great, and they did a fantastic job of soaking up all that rainwater, preventing flooding, and keeping the water clean.
So they fixed a problem and made the place look better at the same time. Smart.
And here's the kicker. Because they didn't need that big pond, they could fit in 6 extra lots for building.
Wow. So they actually made more money because they decided to do things the LID way? That's a perfect example of how being eco-friendly can be good for business, too.
Absolutely. Now let's shift gears again and go back to due diligence.
Right, that's super important step.
You can't skip that part. It's all about doing your homework and really investigating the site.
No cutting corners.
Exactly. The GSA guidebook has some stories about what happens when people don't do their due diligence.
Uh-oh, what happened?
Well, in some cases, developers didn't even realize there were problems with their sites until after they had already bought the land.
Yikes, what kind of problems?
Sometimes they found out the soil was contaminated and needed a massive cleanup. Other times, they discovered there were historical artifacts buried there, which meant they had to stop construction and spend way more money than they planned.
That sounds like a total nightmare. So what's a lesson here for our listeners?
It's simple. Don't rush. Take your time and do your due diligence. Hire the right experts, ask tons of questions, and make absolutely sure you understand everything about the site before you sign anything.
It's like that old saying, measure twice, cut once.
Eh.
Better to be safe than sorry, especially when you're dealing with such a big project and so much money.
You got it. Due diligence isn't just about avoiding problems, though. It can actually help you find opportunities that make your project even better.
Oh, okay.
You might discover that your site has some unique features that you can work into your design, things that make it really stand out.
So it's like being a treasure hunter.
Exactly. And remember, it's a team effort. Your team of experts will each have their own special knowledge, so make sure everyone is working together and sharing what they know.
I'm starting to see that site selection is like this giant puzzle, and every piece of information helps you get a clearer picture of what the site can really be.
That's a great way to put it. And by putting those pieces together the right way, you can make smart choices that lead to a successful project, a happy community, and a healthy environment.
Speaking of a happy community, I think we should talk a bit more about something we touched on earlier, working with the people who live and work near a potential development site.
You're absolutely right. That's something super important that often gets missed. Remember, you're not just building on an empty lot. You're building in a community full of people who have their own hopes and dreams and concerns.
That's a good point. So how can developers make sure they're being good neighbors and thinking about the community's needs?
It all starts with talking to people. Find out what's important to them. What do they like about their neighborhood? What do they wish was better? What worries do they have about new development?
It sounds like it needs to go both ways. You share your vision for the project, but you also really listen to what the community has to say.
Exactly. And you might be surprised by what you learn. People who live in the area know it best. They can point out things you might never have thought of, like traffic patterns, parking issues, even the best spots to plant trees.
So it's not just about being polite. It's about getting valuable information that can help you make smarter decisions.
Exactly. And by getting the community involved early on, you can build trust and a sense of ownership. People are much more likely to support a project if they feel like they had a say in how it happened.
That makes sense. It's about creating a partnership between the developer, the community, and the local government.
Right. When everyone works together, you can create something truly special. A project that not only works for the business, but also makes life better for the people who live and work there.
Now, let's switch gears for a bit and talk about something that's really important to me. Sustainability. We talked about LID before, but I think we should dive a little deeper into it.
I agree. Sustainability is becoming a major thing in commercial development. And it goes way beyond just being eco-friendly. It's about creating buildings and spaces that are healthy, resilient, and don't waste resources.
So it's not just about doing what's good for the planet. It's also about making a better experience for the people who use those buildings.
You got it. Think about things like natural light, fresh air, and comfortable temperatures. These are all things that make for a healthy and productive work environment.
And they can save money on energy bills too. So it's another win-win.
Definitely. And LAD can be a big part of reaching those sustainability goals. We talked about rain gardens and permeable pavement, but there are so many other LAD techniques that can be used in site design, things like green roofs, bioswales, and constructed wetlands.
Some of those are new to me. Can you explain what they are?
Sure. A green roof is basically a garden on the roof of a building. It helps keep the building warm in the winter and cool in the summer, reduces stormwater runoff, and creates a little habitat for birds and bugs.
Wow, that's awesome. What about those bioswales?
A bioswale is like a ditch that's planted with stuff. It's designed to slow down and filter stormwater, taking out pollutants before the water goes back into the ground.
So like a natural water filter. What about those constructed wetlands?
Those are basically man-made wetlands that act like real ones. They can be used to clean wastewater, filter stormwater runoff, and create homes for wildlife.
Wow, it sounds like LID is this whole toolbox full of amazing ways to manage water and create more sustainable places.
It is. And by thinking about LID when you're choosing a site, you can pick a place that naturally worked well with these practices.
So it's not just about what you build, it's about where you build it.
Exactly. And this brings us back to why it's so important to have a diverse team of experts involved in picking a site. You need architects, engineers, landscape architects, environmental consultants, even ecologists to really understand what a site can offer and make good decisions about how to develop it sustainably.
It's all about teamwork and getting different perspectives to come up with the best solution.
Absolutely. And when you do that, you can create something really special, a project that not only makes money, but also makes life better for the people who use it and protects the environment for everyone.
That's a great vision. Now, let's talk about something that might not be as exciting as rain gardens and all that, but it's super important too. Transportation.
Yes, transportation. That's crucial when choosing a site, especially for commercial developments. You have to think about how everyone is going to get to and from the site. Employees, customers, delivery trucks, you name it.
Makes sense. You don't want anyone stuck in traffic all day.
Exactly. And it's not just about convenience, it's also about sustainability. The more people can walk, bike, or take public transit to your site, the better it is for the environment.
So how can developers make sure their sites are well connected to all those different ways of getting around?
Well, there are a few key things to look for. First, being close to public transportation is a must. Is the site near bus stops, train stations, or subway lines? The closer it is, the more likely people are to use them.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
Walkability is also key. Can people easily walk to things like restaurants, shops, and parks from the site? If they can, they're less likely to drive.
So it's about creating a site that's part of a bigger walkable community.
Exactly. And don't forget about bikes. Are there safe and easy-to-use bike paths or lanes that connect the site to the surrounding area? If so, that's a big plus for cyclists.
It sounds like transportation is a pretty complex issue with a lot to consider.
It is. But by thinking about these things early on in the site selection process, developers can make choices that support sustainable transportation and create a better environment for everyone.
In a happier, healthier planet. Okay, time to switch gears again. Let's talk about something that might not be as fun as rain gardens and bike paths, but it's just as important. Making sure the project makes financial sense.
Yes, the money part. You can have the coolest design in the world, but if you can't afford to build it, it's just a drawing on a piece of paper.
True. So how can developers make sure they're being smart with their money when choosing a site?
It all goes back to that A team of experts. You need financial people, appraisers, and market analysts to help you figure out the costs and if the project will be profitable.
So it's not just about finding a site you like, it's about finding a site that makes sense financially.
You got it. There are so many factors to think about. The price of the land, construction costs, how much it will cost to run the building, and how much money you can potentially make from the project.
It sounds complicated. What are some of the big questions developers should be asking?
First, what's the demand like in the area? Is there a need for the type of development you're planning? Are there enough potential tenants or customers to make it work?
Right. You don't want to build something nobody wants it. What else?
What about the zoning rules? Does the site allow for the type of development you want to do? If not, you might have to go through a long and expensive process to get the rules changed.
So it's important to do your research and understand the local rules before you get too far along.
Absolutely. And don't forget about infrastructure costs. Does the site have access to things like water, sewer, and electricity? If not, you might have to spend a lot of money to upgrade those things.
Like hidden costs that can really add up if you're not careful.
Exactly. And last but not least, don't forget about the long-term costs of running the building. How much will it cost to heat and cool it? What about maintenance and repairs? These are all things that can affect how profitable your project is.
So it's not just about the upfront investment. It's about understanding all the costs that come with owning and running a building.
You got it. And by considering all these costs in your financial analysis, you can make smart choices that will help you create a successful and sustainable development project.
I'm realizing that site selection is a pretty complex process with a lot of moving parts.
It is, but by thinking about all these different aspects, you can make choices that benefit both your business and the community.
That's what it's all about, creating a win-win for everyone. Now, before we finish up, I want to hear more of your thoughts on something we talked about earlier, engaging the community. How can developers go beyond just doing the bare minimum and really make a positive difference?
It's a great question. It's really about thinking beyond just meeting the basic requirements and really focusing on the people. How can we make a development that doesn't just exist in a community, but actually becomes a valuable part of it?
I really like that. It's not just building a building, it's about building relationships.
Exactly. Think about things like hosting events for the community, working with local businesses, creating spaces that everyone can enjoy, making sure your development fits in with the feel of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's about being a good neighbor, not just a developer.
Those are some great ideas. It sounds like being involved with the community is a journey, not just a one-time thing.
Totally. It's an ongoing process of listening, learning, and working together to create something that's good for everyone. And hey, remember that GSA guidebook we've been talking about?
Yeah.
It's a fantastic resource to learn more about working with the community and all the other stuff about site selection we've been talking about.
Sounds like that guidebook is a must-read for anyone involved in commercial development.
It really is. And if I could leave our listeners with one last thought, it would be this. Site selection isn't just about finding a piece of land. It's about building the future. It's about creating places where people can work, connect, and just live their lives. And when we get it right, we can make a real difference, a positive one that goes way beyond the project itself.
Wow, that's a really powerful message. It reminds us that the choices we make today shape the world we'll have tomorrow. So let's all go out there and build a better future, one site at a time.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, everyone, that's a wrap on our deep dive into the exciting world of picking the perfect spot for commercial projects. We hope you've had fun and learned some valuable tips that you can use for your own ventures. Remember, it's all about putting together your A-team of experts, doing your due diligence, thinking about sustainability, and working with the community. And if you ever need a reminder, that GSA Guidebook is a great place to start. Happy building, everyone!